All right, so it's March 7th, day 2 of the road trip, and I'm just getting back to the car now. Glad to see it's not towed. It wasn't towed in the middle of the night, and gonna be getting back on the road, making it to Baltimore today. Beautiful day, as you can tell. And yeah, I haven't been awake for very long, but ready to get right out on the road. And should be in Baltimore in about 3 hours, start covering the Camp 83 story. So, see you in a bit. Of course, it wouldn't be no road trip without traffic. Hey folks, so I made it here to Baltimore just fine. No problems on the drive. I didn't do any recording on the drive because it was fairly uninteresting. It took me a few hours and I'm here now. So I'm actually on the site of Camp 83 and a meeting's about to begin that's gonna talk about what's gonna happen tomorrow morning. So let me give you a rundown of what's going on here in Baltimore, why I decided to come here. Camp 83 is a homeless camp here in Baltimore, and it's under threat of eviction from the city tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock, which is in just a few minutes. A meeting's gonna occur here.
Yeah, so this isn't just like cleaned up when it's still dark out and no one's like observing. Like, we're still here, we're still making sure this is being like handled properly, and we're still like representing the fact that people were living here, and the city was willing to just sort of push them aside because of the litany of reasons that they've been providing to the Sun and the public forums. And I think going to City Hall is good, because that too, if it's at 8 a.m. when they close this off, that's also when people are commuting in. And so then we're like right sort of in the downtown, it's very visible, we have signs, a lot of people will see that.
And not only that, I think if we're showing that the city, like the solution to homelessness involves the city doing something. It's not just stepping in and providing temporary shelter, but solving homelessness is going to take policy change, because policy is what created homelessness. So marching to City Hall is kind of being symbolic in that way, that that's where the solution is going to have to come from, not you know, providing change to a beggar along the street, as Martin Luther King said, but that is asking why they're there in the first place, and asking for that change.
Yeah. We already house 97% of Camp 83 clients, and it's fully furnished, fully equipped, and it's ready for business. Christina Flowers is not taking no funds right now. All she's focused on right now is getting everybody in and getting everybody stable with medical treatment and clothing and shelter and so on and so forth. And financial agreements will come at a later date.
So, do we still want to do something, and if so, what do we want to do? And I think in conjunction to doing some sort of action tomorrow, raising awareness about what happened here, we could also, I think it'd be good to assign people to kind of follow up with all of the friends that we made at Camp 83 over the next few weeks to make sure that the housing arrangements are working for them.
Jeff Singer. I used to work at the homeless unit at the Baltimore City Department of Social Services back in the 80s. And in the 90s and aughts, I worked at Healthcare for the Homeless. I was the first outreach worker at Healthcare for the Homeless. I was the first outreach worker at the Baltimore City Department of Social Services. So I've been involved in this kind of stuff for a long, long time. Yes, I was a member of the Leadership Advisory Group for the 10-year plan. I wrote, with some of my colleagues, we wrote extensive parts of the 10-year plan. The plan itself's not the problem. The problem is it hasn't been implemented, and the city doesn't seem to have a commitment to do so. That's the real problem. And the first aspect of that is that there isn't affordable housing in Baltimore or in most cities. It's not that Baltimore's unusual, it's usual. There's no plan in Baltimore to create affordable housing. There hasn't been for 40 years. When outreach workers approach folks who are living on the street or in encampments, they don't have housing to offer them, so they can't do effective outreach. The city has been destroying encampments for the last 4 or 5 years, in part because they don't have an alternative to them, and in part, I think, because it's embarrassing to city government and to the wealthy people, you know, who run Baltimore. It's embarrassing to them for the public to see very visibly what homelessness and poverty look like. So they destroy the encampments, hoping that people will go someplace that's very hidden. So now apparently it is the city's official policy to destroy encampments and tell people to go to shelters, knowing full well that people will not and cannot go to shelters.
Why can't they?
Well, one reason is there's just not enough shelter. There were 16,000 occasions in the latest numbers that the city has released. 16,000 times people were turned away from shelter. Well, there's not enough shelter.
Okay.
Shelters have been closed over the last couple of years. That's part of it. But there are other parts of it. Shelters are very crowded. They're very loud. There's an enormous amount of control required to run a big shelter. In the mass shelters that are most of the beds in the city, you're going to get whatever communicable disease the person next to you has, because you're sleeping, less than a foot away from them. People's belongings get stolen. You have to line up at the same time every day to get a bed, so you don't have a bed that's yours. That's not requirement for a shelter, and there are shelters that don't work that way, but there are very, very few beds in Baltimore that are in shelters that don't work that way. So that doesn't work. That kind of model doesn't work for a whole lot of people. Plus, if people do have problems with drugs and alcohol, they're not going to be allowed in a shelter. If people have a flagrantly overt mental illness, they're not going to make it in a shelter. And for the first time in a long time, this week, city officials actually disparaged people who have addictions. Instead of saying, we want to provide compassion and treatment, they said, we're going to destroy your encampment and you need to go to a shelter and get yourself organized. Which just is not a sensible approach to an addiction or to homelessness. For one thing, yes, it lacks compassion and humanity. It also doesn't work. Why try something that you know is not effective? So those are some of the reasons why a number of us have been trying to organize around here. Not because we want to defend the right of people to live in encampments. Some people do, but that's not my particular interest. The city agreed 5 years ago, when they adopted the 10-year plan, that housing is the solution to homelessness. And now they seem to have turned their back on that, and we have to change it.
Okay.
That's my story. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So for the residents of Camp 83, a charity has stepped up called Souls of Hope, and they are housing all the former residents here of Camp 83. So tomorrow's action is basically going to be a symbolic one. That luckily a charity stepped up in this situation, and a lot of media coverage of this situation may have helped in that regard, but the city needs to begin stepping up and housing these folks rather than just brushing them aside and taking all their belongings. So that's going to be it for today's video blog. Tomorrow I'm going to film the events around the actual clearing of Camp 83. So definitely come back and check out that video blog tomorrow. And if you're unfamiliar with what I'm doing right now, I'm doing a video blog every day for this 3-week road trip that I'm currently on. Going to be heading over to West Virginia and down to Oklahoma for some environmental activism. That's coming up after this whole Camp 83 debacle here in Baltimore. So go ahead and follow me on Twitter, Eye on the Ground, and follow along with the blogs at eyeontheground.tv, or go ahead and subscribe and like this video and comment below. Let me know what you think so far. All right. Thanks for joining me, folks. See you tomorrow.